Melissa Stepanis, Head of Technology Banking at HSBC. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like I'm going to give you the hardest one. We talked a lot about SVB. You were there, how long were you there?
27 years.
Yeah, so you were there a long time. You have a lot of cred on this. Any reaction to what everyone said, or any, you get sort of the last word. I think you're the last SVBer on stage. Anything you would disagree with, or any reaction you have to what has come before you?
There's a lot I agreed with and a little bit I disagreed with, and I think we'll kind of cover some of that as we move along. I do agree with Matt Trotter, who is at Stifel. He was speaking about that fateful weekend.
Where you sort of felt like they gave you a script and it's like, this is what we have to deliver?
Yep. Start your week off, any normal week, and then by Wednesday evening having this strange conversation with the president, and then Thursday morning having that same conversation again with the CEO, and then being told there's nothing you can say, was quite surreal. And on Friday, when the bank was finally taken into receivership, we learned of that on TV, or at least I learned of that from watching the news. So I don't even think for me, and this sounds a little naive, it really sunk in for me what that meant until the next day. And I, like many others, just spent the whole weekend working, with our clients in mind. I mean, that to me was like the number one thing to focus on, and then my colleagues in mind too. And my husband said to me, "You don't have a job. Like, what are you doing?" And I think just the way I grew in my career and what became important to me was always the client as the North Star. So that to me, others that have spoke about that, I think that was very much something that was inherent in many people who had spent time at SVB.
So how did you decide on HSBC, or how did you get to HSBC?
That weekend, again, I remember I was spending time with the FDIC on the phone. Lovely people, but really that isn't who I wanted to work for. And I remember Sunday evening being on a call that ended at 1 a.m. And I went to bed and I really felt something was happening. Like what we were talking about in the phone call made me feel like there was actually a solution. Little did I really understand the DINB structure that Silicon Valley Bank was in at that point, or the FDIC had put the bank in. The Bridge Bank didn't come till the next day. So I went to bed thinking, there's an acquirer. This is great. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up, I looked at my phone, and I saw that HSBC has bought SVB UK. And I was like, okay, they're going to buy us tomorrow, or like the US is coming tomorrow. So I think at that moment, something was embedded in my mind that HSBC saw the value and had conviction in the innovation economy and did something very bold within 48 hours, and that was to acquire that business. So to be able to announce that by Monday morning, to me, I felt validated HSBC as a lender and as a bank.
This is an awkward one, but First Citizens, bought SVB. They're suing some of you for going to HSBC. Any reaction to that?
Unfortunately, I can't talk about it because it's ongoing litigation. Unfortunately, so that's how I'll answer that.
That's fair. I had to ask.
I know, fair enough.
And so, what has the experience been like at HSB so far? I mean, what is your focus and what are the priorities?
Yeah, it's a great question. So HSBC was founded 159 years ago. It's been around forever, and it was founded with the express interest in helping entrepreneurs trade between Asia and Europe. So it really had in its roots this desire to help entrepreneurs, and I think that's always been in its bones. And what I thought was really interesting about this opportunity was and HSBC's management was very supportive of this, was to take a model that myself and others felt really served the innovation economy well, and that was a model that was focused on client centricity. So I agree with Sam, his earlier statements, that people want to be able to pick up a phone and know that there's someone there to serve them. So having this client service-centered model, which we described that we would have, along with subject matter expertise of individuals who had deep sector expertise in specific subsectors in tech, like enterprise software, consumer internet, fintech.
There's a sense that you're strong in life sciences.
Oh yeah, that too. And I think that comes from Dave Sabo, who's running our entire group. He had a long career in life sciences and had started off in investment banking life sciences. So I think there's a little bit of a narrative, back to those words that are being used today, that we're like a life sciences bank.
Right, you left that one off. We don't need to sell that one.
But the majority of what we're doing is tech, and that's because that's a majority of what's funded. And again, different verticals within tech. So we could take this client-centric approach with subject matter expertise, bespoke lending solutions. So to me, this was only going to work if HSBC would serve companies at the earliest stages and also provide them debt, not just operating accounts, all the way through public and beyond. And then I think marrying that with the 8th largest bank in the world, a global systematically important bank. For those of you who don't know that term, HSBC is a GSIB 3, meaning that it's subject to certain capital requirements, loss absorbency, and just stricter oversight, because I think there are only about 28 banks that are on this list. So
it's one tier below JP Morgan.
Yep, so JP Morgan's the one, GSIB 4. We're a GSIB 3. I think we're the 3rd bank down on this list. So, $3 trillion in assets, 3.5 trillion in assets. I mean, we're both very big. So I think marrying that balance sheet and that stability, and something I had learned early on in my onboarding was that HSBC survived the bank runs in Hong Kong, its 2nd year in existence. So it sort of developed this reputation for resiliency back in 1866. So just random tidbit.
One particular piece of the banking conversation that I don't think has come up as much, like investment banking, right? I mean, that was sort of a weakness of Silicon Valley Bank, in that you had these great relationships and then you weren't sort of following it through to the IPO and M&A. I'm curious now at HSBC how much part of the strategy is to create investment banking business, or to create a relationship that lasts through investment banking?
I think that's obviously could be a perk of doing business, but it's not what the bank is leading with, which to me is actually very comforting, and I think makes HSBC a really relevant player in the market. We're not letting the investment bank lead what we want to do on the commercial bank. So that gives the commercial bankers a lot of freedom to build this business the way we want, and not in the way in which the investment bankers want us to.
So global banking, like what I mean, I feel like it's enough work to start a startup. You're like, oh, I'm not necessarily imagining my global expansion right away. Or what is the perk to a startup in Silicon Valley today that's getting started? Why go to a bank with a global footprint?
Yeah. I'd say why not? Because the idea, and I can't remember who mentioned this, who wants to switch banks? Nobody wants to switch banks. So HSBC is a bank that can support a company from its earliest stages through the end of time. I mean, there really is no, as the 8th largest bank in the world, there was really no point where you're going to hit, we can't support you any longer. I think companies are more global than ever now, and technology's kind of created that. And a lot of models, firms need to go global more quickly. If you're offshoring or nearshoring, there's that need. If you want developers overseas, maybe that need is less significant, but you're still moving money and you're still participating in global commerce. So it's actually, since we launched our effort, we've assisted a lot of folks in opening accounts overseas, and we're in 61 countries and territories. So we have such scope that there isn't a place that we can't help you open accounts. So we're seeing a pretty big uptick in that, but we're focused on building a successful US franchise here. So we'll bank anybody. You don't have to have international presence for us to help you.
Anything you can say about the scale of your business right now, or
I can't specifically talk about the numbers, but I will say that we just announced this week that we're going to double the size of our US team, which is pretty great. I think that's a testament for how things have gone since we launched.
You're out recruiting the other bankers today.
Maybe. So if anyone knows anyone who's looking. So we're doing exceptionally well. And I think another thing that's not known is we're now 800 people strong. And I don't think HSBC does anything that they're not going to do global. So it might not be known in this room, but after the bank acquired the UK sub, They then went on to obviously build out a US team and then acquired 25 bankers in Israel and about 20 bankers in Hong Kong. And we're days away from announcing our head of Europe innovation banking. So we've got designs on how we're going to expand through Europe as well. So I think, that says a lot, and we're not just a little team. We're sort of this big team that's working together so we can really launch something that's consistent in all of the countries that we're going to serve.
There's the constant tension of, oh, okay, you're very big, then will you bank my very small company?
Right.
Like, what is your view on sort of the pre-seed sort of company, and what's the strategy on onboarding companies who haven't even raised their venture capital round yet?
Right. So I think that it's always important if you're going to serve, this innovation ecosystem that you're relevant and you're being helpful at every single stage. So right off the bat, when we got in, we were really focused on ensuring that we had offerings and easy ways to do business for even the smallest companies. So we created these packages where it's just really simple. I mean, we heard this earlier today. Founders don't want to spend time on their banking. So leave that to us. So we created a package where, provided you have $75,000 in cash, zero cost to that banking package. So we very much want to onboard companies at the earliest stages. I think another testament to that is this week we announced a partnership with Techstars. Techstars is the largest global pre-seed investor. I think they're making about 750 investment per cohort. And they're in, I think, 30 cities across 14 countries, 40 cities, and God, I got this.
They're all over the.
They're broad.
Yeah.
They're all over the place. So I think there's this, constant sort of disbelief that a bank of our size would want to be involved at that stage, but we very much do.
My last question, just as a person, going through the whole SVB experience, what have you learned, or what's it changed as a banker, or as a person navigating Silicon Valley now, having gone through that? How are you changed at the end of it?
Wow, that's a terrific question. I don't even know if I know the answer to that right now. I think that, when this happened, you really learn a lot about yourself when you experience something like that. And I think what I did was just simply compartmentalize what was going on so I could focus on what I believed I needed to focus on, and that was clients and my colleagues. I think I learned I'm so much stronger than I ever thought I was, and I think a lot of people feel the same. And that everything's fleeting. So, who you work with matters a lot, and what you do, you need to be happy doing those things. And I think I thought that before, but I think that now even more.
Melissa, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.